You
Do
are
we have
now.
a time limit? I want to try to be
No,
sensitive to that.
no, we don't have a time limit
Okay.
actually. But I don't want to take up all of your time, but go ahead and start this off. Caleb, thank you so much for answering my call to action and Derek's call to action recently about everything that's going on right now. And I really appreciate you spending some time with me this morning to talk about yourself and in your organization and what's been going on with you since this whole COVID-19 thing came around, and also just kind of share some positive vibes for people because everybody seems to be stressed out right now. So I'm gonna turn it over to you and just go ahead and tell us about yourself, man.
Well, thanks so much, Brian. I really, really appreciate this opportunity to be on here, get to know you guys. Of course, Derek's such a great guy. From the first time we connected on LinkedIn, I could tell he had a big heart and had his head on straight. So my name's Caleb Kid Coy, and I have a history of working as a life coach and counselor in the entertainment industry. I spent a significant portion of my life working with various nonprofit organizations, churches, ministries, outreaches. When I lived in the Atlanta area, we used to feed 400 to 500 homeless men, women, and children every month. So I'm no stranger to humanity's struggles and adversities because I had my own, which nearly ended in my death at 17 years old to a near meth overdose. And so, my ambitions to become a rock star as a young teenager changed dramatically because I had an encounter in the hospital, and I knew I'd been given a second chance. I knew that there was divine intervention there. And so my life's perspective changed dramatically. And I knew I was put on this earth to serve others. And so by the time I was 19, I was clean. I had my head on straight. I knew what my purpose and my mission was, Brian, and that was to help serve humanity. And I spent a long time doing that relentlessly, for years and years. Like I said, just volunteering my time and resources. I think that experience did something in me as far as confronting fear, because when you stare death in the face, I think it deals with a lot of those fear issues that we have. And being in an industry that I'm in estate planning, I do a lot as a legacy consultant that addresses people's mortality and addresses their money, right? And it's two of the most sensitive issues in people's lives, and that's not easy at times. So there's a very positive aspect for a situation or a crisis like this for me, because it's going to force people to address their mortality, their humanity. And I think I think Derek would vouch for this too. Being on LinkedIn, there's an aura of everybody working hard to pry and position themselves for success or exposure. And while I want everybody to be successful and financially independent, at the same time, there's no escaping the fact that eventually all of our time cards are going to punch out. And so when you've got death staring you in the face, it gives you an opportunity to deal with that. And, I can share family members that, I spent years dealing with who didn't want to address the death issue. And, it took me close to a decade for one family member to convince them they needed to get their ducks in order, get a trust set up, to protect their family from probate and be able to smooth that transition over. And so it's not something that's new to me. I kind of actually thrive in this type of environment. I mean, when I was out on the streets, we're talking middle of the night down on Peach Street, Atlanta, gangbangers, drug addicts. I was right there with them, loving on them, hugging on them. We used to go to New Orleans during Mardi Gras and just love on people. I mean, it just, there was no fear in that. And, when I started out, I was a single guy, right? Nothing to lose. Now I'm a married man with children. I think about it differently, but I still don't have that fear, Brian. I just, I'm such an advocate. My DNA is that of a warrior spirit. And so I started using this hashtag here recently on social, Rise Up, because that's just I mean, you can feel my passion. I'm just like, man, now's the greatest time for humanity to rise up, find their courage, find their purpose, confront their fears, and just start living life to the fullest. I don't think this is the end. I don't think it's Armageddon or apocalypse yet, but I think this is a major reset on a global scale. But again, just like history has always showed us, whether it be 2008, 1929's Great Depression, if we will rise above it, there's opportunity everywhere to thrive, to grow, and even to prosper in this time. So that makes me really excited.
You really covered a lot, and that was a lot of what I was going to ask you. So, man, you like made my job so much easier. So, oh my God, like this is incredible. I hope our audience is going to start taking some of those ideas you threw out there to, to help implement their own lives and into their own businesses or into their own professional careers. And you kind of hit on like, the industries you're in and why that organization. I think that's really important that we really, I think for you especially, you found that why. And I think that's a huge part of what makes us successful is we find that why. We understand what that why drives us to do. And so, and during this time, I know you kind of you hit a little bit on it. What's changed for you since this whole COVID-19 outbreak happened?
I realize once again that this is a time and a season, and the term I like to use is progressive adaptation. I'm just a huge advocate of a progressive growth in general, whether that be spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, business-wise. I don't think as human beings we should ever stop learning and growing. And my story is pretty unique, Brian, in the sense that, I didn't go to college for finance. I didn't go to college, period. I am a self-taught, entrepreneur. And, again, coming from a family with a background of poverty mindsets and mentalities galore, dude, it took me 35 years to break out of that stuff. And it's no easy task. So I relate, I have deep empathy and compassion for people who have come out of that, because it's not easy. You have to work hard to shatter those paradigms and those mindsets. And so for me, it was a lot of reading. I'll never forget the first time I read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. It's like, oh, the choirs of heaven are singing and your mind starts going, wait a minute, there really is a principle and a foundation for success that anyone can find if they will apply it. Again, we hear that we're in this knowledge revolution. And what was the term I heard Tony Robbins and Dean Grazioso using the other day? Knowledge, help me out here. Doggone it. For their KBB, not knowledge, knowledge brokers.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, that's so cool. And it has a lot of appeal to it. But again, knowledge is without the proper application, right? It doesn't mean anything. You can have a bunch of head knowledge up here. For me, that's wisdom. Wisdom is essentially applied knowledge. Until you start applying what you learn and know to your life, it doesn't produce fruit. It doesn't produce growth. And so for me, it's a constant process of applying that knowledge. And so that shifted a lot for me now in this time. And again, I'm so grateful because I had begun positioning myself. Now, one thing I decided after, years and growing up, right, I was a grunt worker and I liked it. I loved doing landscaping. I worked for the union for IBEW underground construction. We're talking 10 hours a day out there in the prairies of Illinois, and we'd drive like 2 hours one way. And I'm digging holes, and there ain't no trees for shade, right? There ain't no break from the sun. And literally, Brian, when we would get in those trucks at the end of the day, you couldn't turn on the AC because it would just wipe you out. So we just, we'd drive around with the windows down if we had to change locations. And again, I'm so grateful that I established that, that hard work ethic and character. But as I got older, I eventually said, you know what, I don't want to spend my life doing hard labor. I want to find a way to create passive income streams, right? And a lot of people said, well, you can't just be lazy. You got to put in the work, blah, blah, blah. And I agree with all that. But you can look at Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Again, there's these mindsets. You can work for your money, or you can get your money to work for you. So one of the things that is kind of new to our business and my current situation and the estate planning side of things is, we take our clients through this proprietary process. Number one, right? We want to get people to understand you do not want to go through probate. You don't want to go through that painful public process where essentially, everybody and their grandma knows what's going on. Attorneys are getting a piece of the pie. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, and it can be publicly contested. So number one, get people out of probate, protect their assets, protect 40% of their estate that would essentially be lost in that process, and then take them through this process. And so what we've done, Brian, is we've leveraged technology. Over 3 decades, we've built out basically a digital estate planning platform that just simplifies things and allows people to set up about 90% of their estate in 90 minutes. And that's really just unheard of. And it gives the client control. Through their secure client console, they can make updates and changes in real time. Click that button with verified e-signature technology that's relevant in all 50 states. And best of all, the electronic funding kit, which essentially funding a trust means that you assign your assets to the trust. And we found that a lot of estate planning attorneys weren't helping their clients to do that. So we embedded attorneys into the process. One of our chief counsel attorneys was formerly a probate attorney. And she found out about us and she was just like, whoa, I got to a place where my conscience, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't endure the suffering, the horror, and the taking advantage of families. I want on board with what you guys are doing. So she loves it. So we've embedded the attorneys in there. They have a small fee in there as well. It allowed us to slash the cost of getting a trust by more than half, and allows the clients to have access to a whole team of specialists. So once we've done that, we funded their trust, they're secure, they're protected. Then included in that cost, we take them through tax mitigation strategies. We help them to divorce the IRS. And again, that's a term, Brian, right? People go, what, is that legal, Caleb? Yeah, not only is it legal, but we've got a way to do it. One of our specialists is a Harvard grad, 23-year veteran in the industry. He wrote an algorithm. And I'm saying all this because I want to lead up into the power of AI, right, and modern proprietary software. So we take folks through that process. We're able to look at what they've got. How can we mitigate your taxes? Recently, one client, I just moved some stuff around. We shifted a standard IRA into a Roth IRA. In like 5 years, he's totally tax-free in his retirement. And his wife was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So dude, that makes my heart so happy, so grateful. Then we go, okay, what kind of life insurance and annuity options can we put you in that can also help to grow your estate? Because people are living longer and a lot of folks are afraid about outliving their money. And so we've, and stop me at any time here. I know I'm just going. But it's just, I'm just so passionate about this because again, it's like, we've got a team of people that not only are they faith-based folks, but they're so philanthropically minded and oriented. And a couple of years ago, we launched our charitable cause marketing program. And this is like so near and dear to my heart because one of my prayers was, okay, there's got to be a better way to bake sales and car washes to raise money. Because so many organizations, they're doing amazing things. They're giving back. It's blood, sweat, and tears. And, it's GoFundMe accounts or whatever. You've got to give to my outreach because I'm doing good things, right? And I get that, but everybody's being bombarded with that. So we said, we've got to provide a solution, if you will. So now the platform allows us to help nonprofits raise funding at no cost and no contract to the organization. And we provide the back office to process their donations and love gifts using charitable remainder trusts, a whole plethora of things, right? But what it does is it positions them in a place to get before, large donors and receive large planned gifts that they would have never been able before to do. So that's
a huge thing, especially nowadays. And that's actually a topic I wanted to cover a little bit later on. But, you're hitting on this topic of giving back. And And that's kind of one thing that we really have really neglected recently is giving back to the community. And now that we're in this spot of quarantine for a lot of us, and we're kind of sitting in our homes like, well, what do we do? Well, there's organizations out there you can give to, whether it's financial, time, energy, whatever, blood, sweat, and tears to electronically. Um, I think that's a huge turning point in our society because it's not just you just giving $20 to to some dog shelter. It's you giving $20 because they need to feed those dogs, and you're actually seeing that goodwill being paid back, and
Yes.
you're actually like, wow, this actually really is really cool. I like it. Um, because at the end of the day, it's we do realize like we're all humans and we're all in this together. So why don't we make this a little bit better for everybody instead of just
Yes.
sitting in our houses being like, well, this is sucks. I can't do anything. You can. There's ways to do it. Here's some people that can help guide that conversation for you. Um, here's I have a really interesting question: is what advice could you give to somebody that says, Caleb, I've been laid off. What do I do, man? Like, who do I what should I do? How should I get through this? What should I tell my family that, like, hey, dad doesn't have a job anymore, mom doesn't have a job? What would you tell somebody that's in that situation?
And that's a great question, Brian. Number one, I would start off by saying don't let the fear take hold of you because fear will paralyze you. It will paralyze you from taking action and it will paralyze your thought processes. So if we can start by rising above that fear, and the human mind is just so powerful because even in survival mode, if we don't let fear take control, it will start looking for an automatically creating solutions to find a way to get us out of that mode. And so again, I know that there are solutions are out there, and as much as I can see the benefit of a government stimulus, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen, right, that there's families could potentially get thousands of dollars to help them out. Well, that's good and dandy. I want to encourage people, don't rely on the government to bail you out. You can so rise above this and create new ways to produce income, from home. Or again, I mean, it's crazy. I'm going to the grocery store, King Supers, where we shop, right? And I'm having a conversation with the guy there who's elderly, right? And got a ponytail just like me. And he says to me, Caleb, I said, because I made a joke, right? So we're interacting. He says, yeah, I got a call from this lady. And she's like, oh my God, do you have this? Do you have this? And he's like, I wish people would stop binge buying. And I'm like, yes, exactly. This binge buying of TP and food is out of fear. And he said, the lady said to me, he's like, oh, well, I'm shopping for a bunch of elderly people because they can't go out right now. And he says, ma'am, I'm 63 years old. I'm pretty elderly too, but I'm in here working every single day. And I'm looking and I'm going, okay, these folks, they're not wearing masks. They're not wearing gloves. And trust me, dude, I'm out and about every day, right? Because, again, I'm not trying to be an idiot, but I'm not afraid. I'm doing what I need to do. I'm going about my business. I was out yesterday with a bunch of retired guys playing tennis. Yes. And we weren't 6 feet apart. No. So again, I go look at the evidence that's around you, right? And I'm not saying don't take precautions. I'm not, promoting being idiotic or stupid. I'm promoting using the brain that God gave us, right, to think, to look at the evidence. I was reading a great article the other day, 2018. Let me just make sure I got this right here. I think it was right around 60,000 people died here in the U.S. from the flu. No, 2018 was 80,000. Last year was 60,000. So, I mean, in 1 month's time, deaths from the flu barely compared to the amount of global deaths from coronavirus, right? So again, but yet nobody was running around in a panic here about the flu. Nobody was running around saying social distancing, social distancing. My wife said, if I hear the term one more time, I'm seriously going to slap somebody. And, nobody was in a panic buying 8 months worth of toilet paper so that nobody else can get any. And I'm like, for me, if I have to, right, I'll wipe my bum with a rag and I'll wash it. I mean, really, that's the last thing on my priority list, right? But again, I don't want to get too far off track here, but it helps me to process, right, that this is where people need to think, right? I mean, it's just the paralyzation of people, and I'm walking through the store and I see it on their faces. And I'm trying to not to laugh out loud, not because I think they're ridiculous, but because, right, I just go, why are they not thinking? Nobody wants to talk about it, Brian. That's what bothers me. It's like nobody wants to really talk about it. Let's just, keep our distance and hide out in fear and let whatever turmoil is going inside of us brew and brew and brew till whatever implosion, right?
Yeah.
So again, going back to this whole thing and these examples that, help me to understand that, okay, even the mortality rate worldwide, 0.1%, and 80% of people over 80 are recovering. Again, right? So if my elderly friends are out there and not afraid of this, right, they're taking precautions too, but it goes to show me that I think this thing has been, exploited to be much more than it really is. And again, I think there's a lot of history that we can look at. Let's go all the way back here. 2004, it was SARS. 2008, it was avian flu. 2010, swine flu. 2012, MERS. 2014, Ebola. 2016, Zika. 2018, Ebola again. And now Corona. And, interestingly enough, during the time of elections every 4 years or so, and I won't go there with this, but to me, there's always more of agenda behind the scenes. So I want people to be educated. I want them to be aware. And I'm going all the way around to your question, right? Number one, don't live in fear and look for those solutions. One of the things that I'm advocating right now for is utilizing AI technology and proprietary software to help people grow their income. We recently partnered with an organization that's been around since 2009. The founders are a group of expert traders, stock market, wealth, finance guys. And one of the founders was the creator of the software and technology for hurricane tracking. Smart guys, right? Can predict where these things are going to go. Well, we've also come to realize that markets can be predicted as well. And so we're looking at, billions and billions of dollars in losses in the stock market. But this particular company is still paying out. Get ready for this, Brian. Are you ready? Not 5%, not 6%, not 7%. Now, I'm a life insurance and annuity guy. And if the market's doing well and we put people in an S&P 500 annuity, they're making 12 or 13%. And that's really good, right? That's really good. But that's about the best you'll ever see. Absolutely. These guys are paying out 20%. The accounts are FDIC and NCAU guaranteed by Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, and Navy Federal Credit Union. And in the midst of this tank, it has not affected them. So through a combination of blockchain, crypto, stock, S&P, basically they were able to mitigate all of the losses because there's so many different ways that this technology, think about this, an AI computer, a supercomputer that costs them $15 million is powering 2 AI computers. They're working with Tesla, they're working with IBM, they're working with more major companies and corporations that I can name. But that's huge to me. And somebody can get in at 20% for $1,000. Or if they've only got a little bit of cash flow, $50 a month, they can get 15%. So I'm always encouraging people, and I'm about to launch this out at a whole new scale, right, and start doing webinars and everything to share about this, because I go, this is a perfect example of how, regardless of what the market's doing or recession, and again, these are protected accounts. Now, I'm an angel investor. I got my feet wet doing stupid stuff because it was recommended to me by a family member, right? My first big loss was significant in the oil and gas industry. And I was so naive back then, Brian. But what that did for me is it put some fortitude in me, right? It built some rhino hide skin in me that made me confront that fear. Because it was like, okay, either I'm going to be afraid and I'm never going to invest again, or I'm going to rise above it. I'm going to take courage, but I'm going to get smarter. So I've been down the road of speculative investing and high risk investing, and I don't encourage people to do that. I encourage people to get into investments, especially if they're starting out, that are safe, secure, and have some degree of guarantee, right? So again, this is a perfect example for opportune times for people to get in while they're waiting, right? Don't, again, here's a time it would be easy for people to hoard their savings, right? Let's go to the banks. Let's take everything out. Let's hide our cash under the mattress. Let's,
Yep.
let's dig it in the ground.
Yep.
And I'm thinking of this guy named Christ who taught a parable, about, three people. And one of the guys, went out and multiplied the money. And another one of the guys went and hid it in the ground. And the steward was like, you didn't make a good choice, pal. I gave you this money to go out and multiply it and produce it. So to me, that's a principle of natural law, that we should always be taking what we have and finding ways to grow and multiply it. Hiding out your money under a mattress again, and again, I'm a huge advocate of saving, right? Have some type of savings, but save so that you can invest it. Save so that you can grow and multiply it. And dude, I'm going to stop for a minute because you can tell I'm just so fired up. I mean,
Yeah, no,
I'm so glad to
love it.
talk to you about this.
No, I'm glad you're sharing all this, because I think this gives us a different perspective than most people here, because especially when you're a professional in your career, they're like, hey, here's your 401k, here's this retirement account, here's this investment account, here's all the things you can do with your money, but they don't tell you everything you can do with your money. And it kind of should cause you to pause and be like, well, is this everything I can do? Maybe, maybe not. But here's a and being a leader, I want to ask you, what would make, when you're looking around to your other thought leaders inside this industry and just in general, what would you define as an effective leader, especially during this time period? Because there is so much turmoil, there's so much upheaval. What would that effective leader look like to you?
That's a great question, Brian. I would say, I'm looking for, and I'm a huge advocate of character. And I had this combo yesterday with a guy. We were in a class together, and he's a guitarist for some very, very well-known country artists, Keith Urban and Carrie Underwood. And, so we had a similar background in working in the entertainment industry. And I said to him, I said, having life coach in the entertainment industry, it gave me some real perspective about, people can have uber talent and gifting, but who they are on stage and who their real character is behind the stage could be night and day different. And so for me, I'm not the kind of person who believes we should put other human beings on a pedestal and worship them. I'm just not. We can appreciate gifting and talent, but for me, I'm looking for people's character. I admire people who have true character and integrity. So I'm looking for leaders who lead with empathy, who lead with compassion, and who have boldness, right? But at the same time, they have a sense of humility, and that type of humility is teachability. And I always like to say this: if we're humble people, we're teachable. It means you're 1,000% teachable. And I'm always learning and growing from others, right? I'm always looking for ways I can learn and grow. So I think there has to be that character and that integrity there, right? And sometimes that's only forged in the furnace of affliction. You're not innately born with that, right? You have to acquire that. Sometimes it's like trust, right? It has to be earned. Respect has to be earned. So I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of talent, or they have an ability, or they've been positioned to make a lot of money, but it doesn't mean the character is there to back and sustain that. And again, while I'm all about people, becoming financially independent, becoming wealthy to better serve humanity, I am absolutely convinced, Brian, that there is a character forming process in that the requirements are that you're a good steward, that you're faithful in the little things before you can really be entrusted with a lot more. And so, if you're somebody, and dude, money and influence and power is always going to bring to the surface what's really inside a person. It just is. It's inevitable. So I hear people all the time, oh, I want to get rich because I want to give all this away and do this and do that. And then, right, they win the lottery and they go blow it all on themselves. And a couple years later, they're completely broke again, right? Because there was no change in the mindset. There was no character development that's forged in them. And, it's an epic responsibility, to be able to handle that. And there's a lot of pressure. And, again, one of the things that I've been an advocate of for years now is I've been a student of studying international law, i.e., how it pertains to the right of self-determination. And dude, it's been so eye-opening. In fact, my computer's sitting on a 500-page book right now called The Law of Nations. Just so everybody can see, I'm not lying here.
Wow.
And
that's impressive.
Emmer D. Fidel was, one of the founders of the principles, right, in which our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were founded upon. And so, going back and studying that from a position of those men that drafted that compact, and a compact is a legally binding contract. All law is contract. All politics is business. This is what I'm trying to get people to understand, right? It all goes back to the foundation here. And these gentlemen that put this contract together had an average 23rd degree level education. They weren't idiots. And punctuation and grammatics and etymology meant everything back then. Look at where words were capitalized. People was capitalized because it referred not to the subjects, i.e. citizens, but to the drafters of the compact. And I'm not even going to get into this, so don't get me going. But things like this were so revelatory in my process, right? And as to the why, we started this whole convo with, why we do what we do and what motivates us. And so beginning to understand the why of why these gentlemen did what they did to come out of, the tyranny of Britain, to come out from the bondage, if you will, or the over excessive use of power and control, to me, it's extraordinary. But not just to give themselves, that freedom from that tyranny, but ultimately to serve humanity, to empower themselves to say, okay, we can either be governed by a structure or by a government who's doing things that we don't agree with, or we can rise up and we can self-govern. So, I think self-governance is something that people need to have a greater understanding of, because the more that we're educated, the more that we're empowered to understand that under natural law, which is God's law, if you will, which is the law of nations, that we are all brothers and sisters, that we are all equals. But I think time and time again, humanity has proved that at times they have an inability to do that, that they have to be ruled over by somebody because, they're not able to. When you look at the hatred and the violence and the kind that doesn't demonstrate that we're brothers and sisters. That doesn't show me that we're, exercising empathy toward one another. We need to grow the frick up, man. We really do. Sometimes I just, stop acting like children.
And you really want to, look around and, with things that are going on right now, it makes you nervous about it. Like, it makes you really look and say, what is it that we're going to get out of this particular issue that we're facing right now? For us, it's COVID-19 and being quarantined in our houses. At the end of the day, what are we learning from that? What are we going to gain from that? And and we as citizens, and this is being citizens in the most general term, people of the nation should look at our leadership and say, what are you going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? What are you going to do to ensure that we are protected both in the physical sense and in the health sense? And then, of course, also, are you ensuring that the nations as a whole, and that's mean like China, wherever, are they holding up the same standards as we are? But then again, also it goes back to, are you actually communicating with that individual? And that also goes back to a question that I kind of posted to you, and like, how are you communicating with people? Like, what's a good, what's been your best practice of communicating with somebody during the social distancing thing, or what's been your favorite way per se?
Well, again, thankfully, right, we've got technology to utilize, and we can use the Zoom calls, we can use the social media chats, and nothing beats picking up the phone and having an actual conversation. The lost the lost art of interacting at times, right, in this social media digital technology revolution. Again, I'm thankful because I hope people are, reaching within and doing what they can to develop more personable, relationships. Because again, for me, looking at sales or anything like that, I think it needs to come from a place of truly caring. And, if you would have told me many years ago I was going to be involved in estate planning or whatever, where I would have probably said, you're crazy. It wasn't even in my scope. But I realized that, it became an extension of my heart of servitude. It became an extension of helping to serve others and giving them, education and awareness. And, these presentations that we do for free, people go away and go, oh my gosh, I've been looking for that information for years. I thought I was going to have to pay an attorney thousands of dollars to understand that. So, to me, it's such a disservice to humanity when people capitalize on human weakness, when people capitalize on human failure, whether it be divorce, whether it be probate, it doesn't matter to me. To me, that is evidence that there is something diseased in our society, that people can exploit other human beings' weaknesses for money. And again, as the great King Solomon said, there ain't nothing new under the sun. So to me, right, again, you look at history, everything cycles, everything, it's revolutions going and going and going. And it comes back. And to me, it's a different day and time, but a similar situation. And, whatever you believe in, the divine architect, right, is looking and going, how are you going to respond this time around? What are you going to do differently?
Absolutely. And I think that also goes back to, another question that we've had in ourselves, and, when I've posted to other professionals is, you know, what is it you, at the end of the day, how are you effectively leading your teams into the next unknown? Because who knows if you're actually ever going to be going back into your office again? You don't know that. So how are you effectively communicating with your team members, saying, this is the expectations, I expect you to be doing X, Y, and Z from your home, and if you cannot meet those expectations, these are the consequences. And be able to effectively communicate that, because it's so hard, because we've gotten so used to being in an office setting, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, go work from home, and everybody's like, wait,
in the office anymore? That's really funny how that works. And people don't realize how much changes in a setting where you're not there 24/7. It really is weird how that happens.
It is, and you brought up a very relevant point, Brian, and that is that of our leaders empowering, right? Their
Yes.
teams. Are they equipping them instead of saying, okay, let's just hold on and get through this and we'll be back in the office together in a few months? But are they going, okay, that might not be the reality. How can I help empower you, right, to create new ways of making money, to create essentially even a new career? It's just such a great point. I think that any true leader, right, is going to realize that, part of growing together, part of growing up means letting go. And, that was a hard, experience in my life when I went through divorce with a child, a very, very little child at the time. I mean, letting go is some of the hardest things you can do, but that is the ultimate exercising of love, is letting go, truly forgiving from here, not here, gotta be here in order for us to grow. And so I see a lot of, CEOs, COOs, leaders, right, who are, crossing their fingers and just going, hold on. And I don't think that's necessarily the best approach. I think that, they've got to be able to let go. They've got to put themselves, in the shoes of their employees and of their clients as well, and say, hey, regardless of the fact that we know people should rise up and confront their fears, a lot of people aren't going to do that, or they're not going to do it very well necessarily, and they're going to shrink back and they're going to hold on to their money. And so that being the case, right, how do we empower others to, essentially still be productive, but, have empathy, right? I'm not hating on those people. I understand,
Yeah.
right? I understand that it is a struggle. I understand that fears are going to come to the surface, that, emotions that you didn't have to deal with before. But again, the question is, how can we confront those and transform them into a positive way of thinking that allows us to take action?
And I think you hit on a very valid point about being a leader and being effective at this point in time. It's the empowerment part of being that leader, saying, I understand I'm not watching you like I used to. I still trust you to do what you're supposed to do. So having that, and I think that would be an interesting conversation piece for you, is what else besides being an empowering leader, what else would you tell your fellow leaders about being more effective in this environment that we're dealing with now?
Well, make sure that you're operating from a place of empathy and compassion, right? Because again, being around, so many, and again, I didn't have a background in sales, right? So being involved around so many people that, are sales oriented and sales motivated, I'm seeing the exploitation of fear to sell things. And again, not good, not healthy. Yes, we're aware of the fear, but if our hearts are in the right place, we're still, we can still sell from a place of empathy and compassion, right? I mean, I realize that, like we started out in the conversation, right, that this should provoke something, right, to get people thinking about their legacy. My primary go-to title, and I don't like titles because I use a lot of them, right? I really don't like them, but my primary is legacy consultant. And since my near-death experience, I realized that it's all about thinking about our legacy, right? What are we going to leave behind? How are we ultimately going to be remembered? And one of the things that I'm doing right now to serve and to give back, and I shared that video with you, is I'm giving away a free healthcare document set with power of attorney and medical directives, because I realize so many families don't have this in place. So many couples, they don't realize if there's an accident, if something happens to them, I don't care whether it's COVID, a car accident, they become medically comatose. They don't have these little papers in place that they are rendered powerless from making medical decisions as parents or as children. And dude, this isn't a coffee cup or keychain, mug type of giveaway. It's a $300 value. But see, I realize that, if I'm going to effectively lead, that I've got to lead by example. If I'm going to effectively serve, it's got to be by example, right? And so that's not judging anybody who's giving away a keychain or, anything right now, right, is, exemplary. It's, it's commendable. But I knew that I wanted to give something of significant value because, again, people are already thinking about this. So if you are, right, what tools are you putting in place to prepare? And I go back to Hurricane Katrina. I was at ground level in Houston's Astrodome and Reliance Center, and I walk in the door, right, and just thousands of people caught strewing everywhere. And I look to my left, Brian, and the first person that I meet is an elderly grandmother in her 80s, caring for her two grandchildren, like 8 years old and 3 years old. And mom has been lost, presumed dead, drowned. And overnight, right? Overnight, people have lost everything. And it goes back to, we realize that FEMA was not prepared for this. Nobody was prepared for this. And again, with this
Absolutely.
COVID situation, it just shows us how unprepared we are for these types of situations. But it also made me realize that once you invoke that survival mechanism inside a human being, dude, there's no limit to what they won't go to protect themselves. And whatever is going on in their brain, whether that be rioting, looting, raping, murder, I don't care. There ain't no extreme that the human nature is not capable of going when it's forced into a survival mechanism. And so look again, right, at just the way on a smaller scale, right? To me, the excessive TP purchase and the food is just an example of people being forced into survival mechanism. There is no evidence or proof that, they're going to be quarantined to their homes for months at a time, that they won't be able to access toilet paper or food, yet their minds said this is what's going to happen. And what happens? I mean, people just inadvertently, right, by nature, they follow suit. I mean, they don't say, okay, is this person thinking independently? They just go, well, my family member went and stocked up for 8 months, so I better go do the same. There's no thought to that. That is strictly reaction mentality and mindset.
Yeah, no, it really is. And that's and as leaders, we should be ensuring that the people around us know, hey, there's no need to panic. There is, you should be prepared already for extensive periods of, whatever you might be dealing with. There should be a preparedness already put in place by you. You should be thinking of, if something were to happen, do I have enough supplies to last? Do I have my work set up so I can be in a particular location for an extended period of time? And it's also forcing the leaders to think outside their traditional boxes as well. So like, for us as leaders, we should be saying, how are we preparing ourselves for this extended, change of pace per se? And how are we actually saying, expressing that to the people around us? And are they effectively taking those lessons and saying, oh, he's not panicking? Because, for a military veteran like myself, this whole quarantine thing to me has been like a deployment. I'm like, I'm in the desert, I'm doing my job, I can't really go anywhere. I just have my work, and that's it. And I can go to bed at night and I wake up the next morning, the same routine. It's very normal for me, but for a lot of for everyday folks, it's not normal. So, for a veteran community like that I'm a part of, we want to ensure that, it's not a panic. Is it weird? Yeah, absolutely. Being inside your house is not normal.
Yeah.
Being locked inside, not necessarily locked inside your house, but being told, hey, maybe you shouldn't go outside and just go run around like everything's cool. Yes, that's not normal, but it's not the end of the world either. So as long as you have prepared yourself, your family, your immediate circle for that type of situation, you should be fine. You should be able to understand, like, this is not a permanent situation. It's a very temporary one, but we're dealing with the very start of it. And I think it was interesting how I had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman. He's like, we're at the very start of the tunnel. Everything looks so black further down.
Yeah.
But once we get closer to the end, the light will be there. The light looks very dim right now, but it's going to start getting brighter once we get further down. It's even further down that we got to worry about right now. And that's why I think it's interesting having you on here today to kind of talk about that, because it's the light at the end of the tunnel is going to get brighter. Yes. We don't need to be looking at, oh my God, it's so dark in here. Let's freak out. Hey, the light's coming. Let's take a step back and say, all right, yes, bad situation, quarantines, self-isolation, social distancing, yes, absolutely. Take those. But let's be sensible and say, hey, we don't have to, we may not shut everything down, but let's be smart about what we're doing and how we're going to take care of each other during these troubled times. Because, like I mentioned earlier, people have lost their jobs. They have to find ways to sustain themselves and sustain their families. We have to step up as leaders and as a community and say, how do we take care of these people?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just writing $1,000 checks to everybody under the sun, which is great, fantastic, don't get me
Sure.
wrong.
Sure.
But what other ways can we do that? There's organizations that need donations. There's organizations that would love to have volunteers. You can volunteer with an organization from the comfort of your home, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be spreading their message around to your network that may not be in the same situation as you, but is able to say, hey, let me go to their website. Let me donate $5. Let me donate $10. Let me, send them, a donation to, let me send them, a box of food or whatever the case may be. Let me help them in another way that doesn't maybe make me go out into the world. I can do it right from my couch. And you're impacting a life in a very positive way. And you're actually helping your community as well. So that's another thing, is we have to start looking at we're communities of people. And how we're impacting that community can be bigger than just one person on a Zoom call. So, and who knows? You never know. It could turn into something special. Hi. That's your partner in crime, huh?
This is legacy right here.
There you go.
And I love that you mentioned your veteran and military background, because we live in a military town, right, Brian? And I'm playing tennis with a lot of retired military guys. And so that's probably what you shared, a lot of that mindset, because you're taught, right, to prepare. You're taught to plan ahead. You're taught not to panic when you're in adverse situations. And so, great point in that. People, again, this should allow them or empower them, as we do as leaders, right, to start thinking proactively. And did I share many years ago on my online radio show that it would come to this? I did. And that's not me boasting and being arrogant. It's just saying that when everything is good and fine and dandy in this, land of capitalism, people tend to procrastinate preparation. And we all know that there are a lot of folks that are living paycheck to paycheck. And I've always tried to encourage people that just because you have leftover at the end of the month doesn't mean you should just blow it. I looked at families of 5 people that would, make their run every week to the local convenience store to buy junk food and sodas for $50, when they could have got the exact same things at the market for, 15 or 16 bucks. And so, this was an individual that was, making 80 plus K a year, and every month went by and they didn't have anything left. And their cars were getting, repoed. Their house was foreclosed on. And in my mind, I'm just going, where is it all going? So we've got to save, we've got to prepare. And again, it may not mean, digging your bunker and stocking it with, 6-8 months of food or supplies. I got no problem with that, right? I get it. But again, right, I don't think we're there yet, right, where they're going to close everything down and the dollar is rendered powerless and you can't buy anything. That's a different scenario, right? But we ain't there yet, man. So, in the meantime, just prepare for, a situation like this. When you get laid off, don't blow everything just because you got it. You don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. We hear it all the time. Penny saved is a penny earned. But just those little things that you cut out, don't go to Starbucks twice a day. Make your coffee at home. Those little areas, they can add up so fast. And like I said, $50 a month at 15%, that grows pretty fast, right?
Yeah,
and that has a compounding effect, right, as well, actually. And you look at guys like Warren Buffett, and the billionaires, they will talk to you all day long about the power of compounding interest. How do you think they got there? But yet, what I like about Warren, right, is he teaches those elements of frugality as well, right? He doesn't live excessively. He's worth a lot of money, but, and it doesn't mean, right, that you can't get a bigger house. Does it mean you should buy 15 Ferraris just because you can? To me, that's excessive, right? I'm not here to judge anybody, but, I don't see the necessity in it. I don't even drive new cars, right? I drive used cars that are paid for. I used to flip a lot of cars. I used to work for a dealership. So, pretty much everything I buy, I can make money on if I want to, And that's just my entrepreneurial, right? The things that I learned early on that it's become a great skill for me as a side hustle, right? So what are ways that we can side hustle? And again, with technology, right? And I know that it's hard right now, even the offer ups and the let go apps and the Craigslist, because people don't want to, but this will go away. And again, right here, on your little iPhone, you have unprecedented opportunity to make money on the side. I think about the millionaire who was buying clearance products at Walmart, started an Amazon business, and now he's a multimillionaire. Nobody has to reinvent the wheel, Brian, right? That's what I'm getting at. You can build on the foundation that people have already, they've already put the blood, sweat, and tears in, and you can just find a creative new way of doing it. So,
and that's also the other part of what we can think about as we go back into our communities is how are we going to create that secondary income maybe that we need to survive, or how can we improve our income that we've already been making? Because again, you're not going to be able to go to your boss and be like, so you're paying me $80,000 a year and you need to really pay me 95. Boss is trying to be like, sorry, can't do it. You might have to go find somewhere else to work if you want to make that kind of money. And having that kind of mobility may be a little bit difficult, but how do you supplement that particular 80,000 to make it maybe 95 because you're making $15,000 from something else you found? Having that ability to be flexible can be life-changing for you, especially. So, and that's a great topic of conversation that a lot of us probably should think of, is how we, instead of just relying on one paycheck, how are we making a second, a third, a fourth, or whatever? How are we able to do more with less? I mean, you never know. You should never shut a door off to opportunities. What I've always been told is, when opportunity knocks, open the door. If you don't like it, shut the door and walk away. Because not every opportunity will be advantageous for you, but you never know. But Caleb, I really appreciate it. Where can people go to connect with you to further this conversation?
Sure, absolutely. Well, my website is calebkidcoy.com. That's kid with 2 D's. And a lot of tools on there, about protecting your assets, about estate planning. If you go to YouTube and Google Enduring Legacy, you'll see my video with my logo there, and you can learn about my history. Claim your free healthcare document set. Again, it's such a powerful tool. If you don't have that, share it with friends and family. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's kind of my go-to platform. So if you're on there, connect with me as well. Contact at calebkidcoy.com if you want to shoot me an email. Again, I'm so grateful for this time, Brian, because this is what I live for. I live to share my passion, to empower others to rise up, and really, I think it's an opportune time to start a movement. And you mentioned something great, right? Look for those opportunities. They really are everywhere. If we can become cognizantly aware that they're around us, the more that we practice that, because it's really an art, the more that we start to recognize, right, what might be good. And don't be afraid to take a risk. I'm not saying, throw all your savings into taking that risk, but, minor risks in areas that may be a little bit unfamiliar to us are okay, because again, we learn from our failures. We grow from our failures. And I know I wouldn't be the entrepreneur today if I hadn't failed massively back in the day, right? And so just don't be afraid to fail. It's and the whole term has been so overly glorified, right? It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. And no, I don't encourage people just to quit their day job and go for it. I don't think that's the best advice, but I think that we can work our way into it with what you and I just shared, do those side hustles. And for me, it's, especially as I get older, it's about balancing my time, because that's the most precious commodity we have. And we can't get it back. And, I'm not going to sacrifice that for, my family and my kiddos. I want to be able to spend as much time with them as possible. And so what a blessed opportunity to draw closer to our families, to improve our marriages, to improve our relationships with our kids. again, I'm just a huge advocate of family being the foundation. Our values and our morals, ultimately, because we are the majority, they reflect who we are as a nation. So many people want to say, well, what the president does reflects, and what the Congress does reflects. And I'm like, no, they're not the majority. We are, the
Yes.
individuals and families that make up this nation. So, what are we going to show the world that we stand for, during this time?
And that also brings up an interesting point is, and kind of let's wrapping it up in here is like, we need to look at what are we really going to be telling that next generation? What are we going to leave to that next generation that says, this is the hard work that we put into for this particular time in your life? This is all the blood, sweat, and tears that we have poured out to ensure that this will never happen again, or that this type of issue, like an outbreak, like a pandemic like we're facing now, it will be handled in a more advantageous way for everyone. So we're not having to shut everything down. We might just be focused on particular things of, hey, let's not go here, here, here. All right, fine. Let's cut that out, because now we can actually enjoy a different type of way. And it should encourage everybody to be like, how do I enjoy my movies differently? Instead of going to a movie theater, how are you going to enjoy them differently? Maybe you stream them. Maybe you stay at home and watch them instead. I mean, there's so many different avenues now that you can take advantage of. I mean, I've probably watched more streaming services than I ever thought I would, because I'm like, I don't cable TV. I can only watch so many channels on my cable system, so I'm gonna like turn on my Disney Plus or my Netflix, my Hulu, whatever. It's kind of like weird paradigm. Like, I'm able to now enjoy many different things because I'm like, I can only watch so much of one thing before I'm like, you know what, I'm bored. But it's that kind of like enlightenment, I guess you could say. I mean, and I'm sure other people are like, you know what, I'm able to enlighten myself. I'm able to focus on, like what you said, focus on my family, focus on my relationships, focus on maybe reading a book. Because you're not spending an hour plus each way driving.
Instead of Netflix or Hulu, which, it's been hard for me at times too, right? I know that I could be doing something better or different. We're all guilty of our binge seasons, right? But again, it's an opportune time to evaluate what we're giving our time and energy to.
What inspiring message would you want to give with our viewers as we close out today?
I guess for me, Brian, the most inspiring thing to say to them would be, exercise independent thought. Ask questions on everything. And since you have the time now, actually do some due diligence and research, dig for yourself. I believe there is a matrix system, and I believe there is a way out. I believe there's one key maker and there's one door. And, it's a time where it's a great time to start taking the red pill. Let's just put it that way. Somebody told me about a post the other day, said, we ran out of blue pills. We only got red pills left. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much it right now. Either go crawl in your hole or take the red pill. But this steak tastes so good, I know it's not real. A lot of people choose, right? They choose to live in that false matrix because too much accountability is required when you know the facts, right? When you know the truth. And I get that's why a lot of people run from it. But there's also an incredible liberation, right? That is found when you're willing to break out of the matrix, when you're willing to think independently, when you're, willing to exercise self-determination, if you will. So I'm so grateful for you taking this time with me today, Brian. Thank you.
I really appreciate it, Caleb. It's been a great conversation. I hope our viewers enjoy this as well. And, we're going to be, sharing this through our social media channels as well. So, you guys can check out Caleb's work. You can check out our work at Full Moon Digital. And, Derek has been a huge champion for this idea of process. And I'm definitely enjoying it as, we get other thought leaders throughout the world, even if we can find those people throughout the world to just say, hey, think differently. Open up your mind a little bit. Look at the greater picture that's out there. It may not seem like, when I look outside my window, I'm like, oh, it looks kind of rainy and dreary out there. But reality, it's a chance for me to go take a walk up to the mailbox because you know what, the pollen's not bad. I can actually breathe outside.
There you go.
You know,
There
I
you go.
don't have to be cooped up. I can just go take a walk through my neighborhood, and I'm okay. I'm not gonna die because I just took a walk. You know, I'm gonna be able to maybe see my neighbors that I don't typically see. You know, because they're gonna be like, oh, I'm inside, you're inside. I need to go outside. You go outside. Maybe we'll meet somewhere in the middle and say, hey, I've never met you before. We
Yep.
strike up a conversation, and that's building that community as well. So communities can be built many different ways, and I think you touched on that topic earlier. Community should be how we view it, and should be what we want to see the community be. For me, I want to see a diverse community. I want to see ones that people work together in. And I think that can be achieved if we take down some of those walls. And those walls can be easily broken down if we take the time and the energy to break those things down. So, and stop letting people divide us. And
Absolutely.
that's a huge ask for some people, but it can be done. Um, but overall, it's been a fantastic chat. I'm really excited about this. I'm sure you and I will catch up some more. But you
Yes,
know,
for sure.
I really hope our viewers take this time to maybe connect with you and have a conversation because you, like you said in the beginning, you don't know what tomorrow will bring.
That's right.
Are you prepared for that? I know. I'm like, me. I'm in my 30s. I'm good, you know. But at the same time, it's like I can be hit by a car tomorrow and I'm screwed. So you know, who knows? So you know, it's those kind of conversations that people should honestly take take a seat and say, "Am I ready?"
Yeah,
Because you may not be, or you may not be as ready as you think you should be. So,
exactly.
and Caleb, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to further conversations. I hope our viewers reach out to you and have at least that, hey, have you thought about this kind of conversation? Because again, I don't know many people that have.
Yep.
And it's just not something we talk about either. That's the other thing I think you've
Yep.
even brought up is we don't talk about it. Why? Because we are scared of it.
Yep.
Shouldn't be scared. Should never be a scared thing.
Yep.
So anyways, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we'll be chatting soon.
Sounds good, Brian. Thanks so much. I look forward to sharing this with my audience as well. Have a great day, brother.
Absolutely. You too. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.